Hi everyone, I'm Vu, and this is a video on printing Nightguards. Nightguards are unique and because they pose the challenge of not being regularly shaped, not flat on the top or the bottom. We use supports. Supports allow us to stick a big fat layer on the first layer of the platform for adhesion, and then build little stilts to hold up, or actually, in actuality, hang up the resin models in midair. Our goals for supports are fourfold. We want to minimize print failures or maximize reliability, depending on how you look at it. We want to minimize cleanup. We want it to fit onto the teeth, and we want it to preserve the occlusion. A really important video on this topic is made by the people at Nerdtronic. It is called Why Resin Prints Fail, and I think it's a killer video on how to understand how supports work. Some takeaways from that, I won't share everything for time's sake, but print flat whenever possible to reduce cleanup. But you know, on Nightguards you can't do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our inner surface face up for Nightguards. You would put the outer surface face up for the occlusal for full arch models, but for surgical guides and for Nightguards we want to do our intaglio face up. We want to have lower print angles if we want to minimize our print time. You see 2 layers are going to be faster than 7. We want to go to a lower angle if we want higher bond strength as well, because the surface area between the layers will be a lot stronger. For more density though, we need to do a higher angle. This is kind of like a dishwasher, right? Nobody puts your dishes flat in the dishwasher, you put them vertical. That gives you a little more room. So we're having to compromise, you see here, between speed and bond strength and density. A lot of things to consider. You could probably study this page for a while and come up with some, reasons to consider one or the other. My staff are trained to go to 45 degrees. I like the happy middle. You kind of have a medium of everything, and it works out really well. I can show you how to do minimal cleanup on all of these now, actually, though. So let's bear that in mind as we go over some of these methods. We're going to go through very briefly the D3 splint Vubase Style Raft, because I did go over that in great detail in my last YouTube video. We're going to talk about Rayware Desktop and their supports, some workarounds for them, including Vubase 4 and 5, and we'll wrap it up with Rayware Cloud, which Sprintray believes is the future, and I think poses some very interesting possibilities for how to do a Nightguard very cleanly. So we'll talk about not only the default skinny supports, but also steep and skinny supports. And here is Rayware Desktop. It runs on your Windows or Mac. You can download it at sprintray.com/software. And you can see here, when I drag in the STL, it's just kind of oriented this way. The software tries to find the biggest flat and orients it, and more often than not, it only works for things with big, huge flat bases like a model. So here in a Nightguard, we don't have any big flat surface. It's just going to guess and plop it down. So what we need to do here is figure out what angle we want to use. As I said again, I'm a big 45 degree fan. So if I hold down Shift, I can have it pop 45 degrees just like that. One thing you can do, I'm going to hit reset here. One thing you can do, oh look, now our intaglio is down. Let's fix that real quick. I'm going to hold down Shift and just rotate it 45 or 90 degrees at a time. Or maybe it's 45 at a time. One thing I can do to square up the models is I can bring it up to the back here, and I can just kind of square it up looking straight down, and now I can come back here. That's a little hack for you. You can hold down your Shift key with your left hand, and with your right hand use your left mouse button. Drag it and it will pop 45 degrees, and your model is now at 45 degrees. From here we've got a couple of options. I'm going to copy this and show you. The most traditional option is to generate supports. You would click this button here, hit generate, all are selected. I'll hit generate selected, which will only do the blue selected model. And so I'm going to hit this generate select, and you can see here it makes the traditional road supports. And these are kind of thick by today's current standards. And so they do present a little bit of a challenge removing. You're going to make quite a few bumps. A lot of people don't like that. And so we came up with a couple of different workarounds for that. I'm going to show each of you them one by one. The first workaround was to generate something in the slicer, in the design software itself. And so that was the Vubase platform. Here, actually, let me step back in history one notch here. Before the Vubase platform, there was the Vubase. I looked at this and I said, okay, how can we make this better? Baron Grutter invented a rectangle-shaped print raft that was first implemented in D3 Splint, but that created a pretty large block in the front. I didn't like that. So I went ahead and designed Vubase 4. We'll put the link in the comments. And you just line up the blue balls so that it has some purchase on the model. And you just print it at 45 degrees like this. And that made for a much easier cleanup than cleaning up all these bumps. You would just have these bumps here. As I said again, 45 degrees worked really well. And if it didn't, you could just angle it up to 60. And then you'd have fewer problems there. You can actually print up to about 75 degrees before you'll start having overhang, underhang problems in your intaglio. So I'd go no further than about 75 degrees. If you want to live dangerously, you could try 80, but and then you could print with your Vubase 4, and that worked really well. It produces kind of a medium-sized bump in the front area, but otherwise it's pretty good. The next thing we did was we developed Vubase 5. This is actually 5.2. You can see there's 2 rows of spikes. You actually only use one of them, and the issue is you have to have your model 5 millimeters above the print surface. And I showed a couple methods in a previous video on how to use Vubase 5 and Vubase 4. But in case you missed it, what I would do is I would generate supports. If I crawl about 5 millimeters off, let's go ahead and generate selected. And that would make the same supports as over here. Only this time I'm going to hit the edit support button and I'm going to delete them all. One by one. Doesn't take too long. So you can see here I just hover my mouse until I find red and I just delete. Oh, if you miss, you just have to select on again, hit edit supports, and just delete them all. I'm going to keep that middle one. Obviously this is not going to print successfully, but if we put it on top of Vubase 5, I line it up from the horizontal direction here. Right there. That's good. Oh, we're not even close, so we're going to move it over there. We're going to move it in here. I want to make sure that it's right on that horizontal section there. We want to go over here. We're going to just make sure that the very bottom of the raft is supported, or the Nightguard is supported by a support pillar. These are 0.8 millimeters in diameter. And so they'll provide a small but minimal, and yeah, only one row engages in this. You wouldn't think it works, but it actually works even at 45-degree print angles in a dialed-in Sprintray printer. But if you want to be cautious, you can do it more vertical like I'm showing here. So that's how you use Vubase 5. Showed you Vubase 4. Another technique you can do along the lines of deleting supports is you can actually edit supports here, and you can delete all the posterior supports. I've seen a few people do this. This produces a medium-sized mess, so you can just keep the supports only in the anterior area, and that will work most of the time. I do have to preface that almost everything here is your mileage may vary. Outside of some of the official support methods. So this is a variation I see. I've seen 2 variations on the delete support methods. One is to delete the supports up to about, say, the canine, but leave them left to right. The other is to leave just a rim of supports on the corners. This is kind of nice because you don't have any occlusion really in the corners, so you can have bumps here and smooth them off with your Scotch-Brite wheels. This will print fairly well, and it reduces the cantilever stress somewhat. So this is a method to consider too, is just having partial supports in the anterior and or the periphery. So that's another method you could use with Rayware Desktop. And then the final method I want to show you is the one from D3 Splint. So if you generate the Vubase type platform in D3 Splint, I made a separate video about that already. What you can do is just go ahead and click the base feature, select the bottom of it. You can see there it's not actually flat right now, so select the bottom, that flattens it, and then you have a Nightguard that is ready to go with just some orientation things here. Once again, just like with Vubase 5, if 45 degrees is giving you fails, just go ahead and regenerate it in D3 Splint at a 65 or 70 degree angle. I can't recall what this new one is, but you can see here we've done the same Nightguard at a steeper angle, and that may give you more reliability. Actually, it will give you more reliability that way at the cost of a little time. Not a huge amount. You can see there's a height difference. So if we were to look, realistically at time here, I'm going to delete everything here. It will base the print time on the tallest model, right? So it's an hour 55 for the steep one, and for the 45 degree one, we're looking at an hour 28. So an hour 55 versus an hour 28. It's not. I guess if the patient's waiting, okay, then yeah, you'd want to go with the faster one. But if that's the case, I'll show you something in a minute that's even faster than this. So those are the methods I would consider for the Rayware Desktop that have worked for me. Once again, the default thick supports, which I don't think anybody uses those anymore, anterior only. Oh, there's one more hack. I have to show you one more hack on this. So there's another way to get skinny supports. We credit to Maggie over at Sunrise Dental in Huntington Beach for documenting this technique, and that's to get a Nightguard and to make the support skinny or skinnier. And the way you do that is you first, I'm going to do this real quick and dirty, you just generate the supports, and then what you do is you, I'm sorry, I did that wrong. So we're going to remove the supports. So what we're going to do is scale the model up first, 160%, and that should make all 4 dimensions go up, and then we're going to generate the supports for these. And it's going to generate medium-sized supports for this gargantuan Nightguard. Then what you're going to do is you're going to once you have these gargantuan supports, you can delete some of them if you'd like to, combine techniques. Once you have that, what you're going to do is go to this tool thing and you're going to export that model, supports and all, to, let's call this the Mega Nightguard. So we're going to export that, including the supports, to a separate STL file. Now the reciprocal of 160% is 62.5%. So once this thing finishes rendering, I'm going to re-import it, shrink it down, and then that will shrink down the model back to 100%, but it will shrink the supports down as well. So we're going to take Mega Nightguard here. You can see I'm going to import that file back in, and you'll see a copy of this as one merged STL file. So here we go. We have a really big one. We just need to hit the base feature to orient it to the bottom. Base lets you select the bottom here. Click there, and now it's on the bottom. And so now you have that same model again. This time though, I'm going to hit the scale tool, and the reciprocal of 160% is 62.5%. Click it, and now you have your original Nightguard model design. You have your original Nightguard model, but you can see the supports are very skinny, still cross-linked, and you have the ease of remove. This is a really ingenious method. It makes you skinny supports. It allows you to Rayware Desktop. The thing for me is it's like about 4 or 5 steps more than I care to do. But it does give the desired result. And when you're using skinny supports like this, honestly, I would have probably, if I wasn't in a hurry to demonstrate this, I probably would have done this at a shallower, like 20-degree angle and done it that way. But yeah, that's how you would get the, the expand and shrink method to get you a skinnier, easier to clean off support. And because they're so numerous, it still provides plenty of support for the Nightguard, and you yield a reliable print. And this is Rayware Cloud. I've clicked Print Setup here to get to a blank print setup. I'm going to click Occlusal Guard, pick my printer, pick my resin. It will default to that since I picked Occlusal Guard. And then we're going to drag and drop a file down into this box here. Here we go. You have to remember it's starting to upload now. I'm going to go ahead and do a speed comparison though. I'm already giving it, I'm going to hit next here. It's going to start to ingest. Remember that first few seconds was just uploading to the cloud. Now the server is going to run a bunch of stuff on it. In the meantime, I'm going to go to Rayware Cloud or Rayware Desktop and drag the same file onto Rayware Desktop. And you can see here it's finding some integrity issues. We're going to hit Fix, and it's going to fix them. Once it fixes them, it's almost predictably going to turn the Nightguard upside down. Yep. And so now we're going to go ahead and use our gyroscope to fix that problem. And you can do it in 2 moves, or you could just do it in 1, depending on which way you do it. So there I go. I've got it at a 45-degree angle. We're going to go ahead and generate supports, and then we're going to go ahead and delete them all to use Vubase 5. So I'm going to hit Edit Supports. You'll see there that Rayware Cloud is just slowly taking its time. It's done now. And you can see it's got a support done, and it's got the supports done. It's going to take 54 minutes to print. At 45 degrees, this model is going to take an hour and 26. So that's a savings of about 33%. It's a pretty good time savings to do it that way. I've got it Nightguards Flex, also the same settings, and you can see there, because I'm using a cantilevered print technique to minimize my occlusal supports. I have to print at 45 degrees or steeper to get a reliable print. If I print any shallower than 45 degrees, my chance of print success goes down because the cantilever stress on these limited front supports becomes too high. And so here I am, I've got it deleted down to 1. I can add my Vubase 5 and then line it up. But you can see for the time for me to fix the integrity, line up my low fuss, my low mass print supports, it took me a little longer than Rayware Cloud did actually. So not as slow as you think, because it is also arranging it on the bed, it's angling it, it's fixing file integrity, it's generating the supports, and because it's thousands of little tiny ones, it's easy to tear off, easy to pre-polish. And then since you're forced to pre-polish, actually the funny thing is, especially when you're using Keystone, being forced to pre-polish off all these little bumps actually results in a shinier end result than if I had just had nothing here, than when we had nothing here and we just skip straight to pumice. So it's a blessing and a curse. Yeah, that does end up taking you more time to polish off those bumps, whereas someone with Sprintray Flex would just print this and then go straight to pumice, almost straight to pumice after they. So it's kind of a give and take there. But let's say you wanted to have no posterior supports, but you still wanted these tiny supports, and you didn't want to go through the fuss of Vubase 5 for the minimal cleanup. Let me show you something. Amir, the CEO of Sprintray, has been promising a Vubase implementation in Rayware Cloud. I've actually given him permission to license that name without any royalty, but it's honestly not necessary, because all you have to do is rotate the angle 45 degrees more. Okay, so you take that 25 degree angle, now it becomes 65 or 70 degrees, and then we hit confirm changes to recalculate the supports. Watch what happens. Okay, it's going to take a second. It's going to glitch, and then there you go. Look, you've got supports only in the front, none on the no supports on the occlusal, and just this weird support here. Just leave it. You'll find out it makes worse problems when you try to get rid of it. So you have just these little tiny supports just on the facial edge of the Nightguard. They don't affect the occlusion at all, even on a lower Nightguard like this. And they don't affect the occlusion. The only downside is time. We're back up at an hour and a half. But that's actually not too bad. It's actually comparable to what we saw with it's an hour and 26, printing at 45 degrees with Vubase 5. You have a very comparable time, but in my opinion, an easier user experience than having to sit there and manually delete supports and all this. This is all I have to do is drag it, let it propose supports, then angle it up 45 more degrees, and I have something as convenient as Vubase 5. It should print fairly reliably because it's at a steep angle. As long as your first layer adhesion is good, you shouldn't have any problems here. So we've done a couple of them, and they've removed very easily this way. I've actually spied a couple of Sprintray people actually doing this also. They're just not making a big fuss about it, but yeah, there's been kind of they have their own Vubase kind of hiding in plain sight. The only thing I would do differently here is probably raft down here a little bit more to create a little more grab on that first layer, but this should work in a good dialed-in printer. I hope you've enjoyed that side-by-side comparison, and happy printing.